Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming, braving the conditions out there, whatever they may be for you personally, and welcome everyone out there. We're going to be together for 2 hours, and we are going to catch up on everything that's happening, and I'm going to first provide my take on some of the energies and the situations that are going on the planet, because there's a lot going on. And I've had a lot of insights over the last month as well, very synchronistically. I've been editing the manuscript of my first book. So I know a lot of you who are out there, and if you're new, welcome, are in my inner circle communities. And I'm just getting ready. I know I've mentioned this the last few times, to launch the new platform of my website on MicheilaSheldan.com. And its purpose is to bring people together. And it's already happening. So in Ohio, for example, we have a group of people who meet in physical, get together, they discuss the channeled content and share insights, and there are groups like that all over the globe that are starting to form, and my intention is to support those with content. And the manuscript of my first book will go out free. So groups that have 5 members or more will start just dolling that out in a book reader that has been programmed into my website, which is super, super cool. And the book really does deserve merit in terms of discussion, because it's pretty, as you know, my channeled stuff, it's like it can get pretty thick with information, and this certainly is. But in editing and preparing for this, welcome, come on in. In editing and preparing for this, I have been so immersed in what I channeled back in 2015, which lines up exactly with what's going on the planet today. And I never could have known when I was channeling it that we'd be in the middle of this. Although I kind of knew what was coming vibrationally, I had no idea how it was going to physically manifest to the earth. So those are some of the insights I want to share. And I'm going to try to not repeat myself if you were on my live call last Thursday. However, again, I think it all deserves merit in terms of discussion. So before I get to that, a couple quick announcements. We're here from the Flower of Life Center for Human Evolution. If you're new, we meet here in Detroit every month. We have an expo here in Detroit that will take place in November. We have a kids movement, Conscious Youth, which is a really cool program for kids aged 9 to 18 who are interested in these topics and who are very gifted themselves. And then we have also Weekend in Wizardry, which is a weekend event that we do here in the Detroit area where kids get together and we bring the teachers together with some really cool stuff. They learn about auras and mediumship and channeled art and late language and all of this really fun stuff. So if you have a kid who would enjoy that, you can check that out on our websites. And also, for those of you who are in my programs, I'm launching a new one, a new live course starting on Monday, May 25th, and it's going to be about vibrational alignment. Perfect topic for what we're in the middle of, but might be a little bit different than what you've heard it before, because we have a collective situation going on. So not only are we, well, we always do, but we have a pretty big one going on right now. So this course isn't just focused on vibrational alignment and manifestation personally. It really is how we synchronize with what's going on the planet and actually impact that in some meaningful way, both for ourselves and for everyone else, because that's why we're here. So that's what the course will be focused on. If you've been in my programs before, I always do a pre-sale a couple weeks before, and you'll get that on email or in the Facebook community when that's available. It's coming together right now. So with that, let's discuss the energies. And if you guys have questions in the room, I'm pleased to take them. Anyone online have questions, we'll just kind of flow with this, and I'm pleased to address any concerns or things that are going on, personally. So as I mentioned, channeling this book, I've really been immersed in some interesting vibrational analysis of the current conditions that we're facing on the planet. And that is the most important message I want to bring today, is that everything that we see manifesting started vibrationally somewhere. And this is how we affect it as well. So we are constantly connected to everything that comes to be experienced by us or humanity, which sounds kind of tough to accept because we know there's a lot of things happening on the planet that we don't want to take personal responsibility for because it's over there. Someone else made the decision. The people who aren't awake don't know what they're doing and all this other stuff. But the fact of the matter is we're all immersed in this together. No matter how much we want to separate ourselves from other people and create these definitions of right or wrong, awake, not awake, conscious, not conscious, we are all intertwined in a massive energy. And there are some points I want to make about that just to help you understand what we're experiencing, what we're facing. So if you were with me back in the last Inner Circle class, that was Inner Circle 14, we talked about, yeah, you were there. Awesome. We talked about soul integration, right? Or soul alchemy, they call it soul alchemy. And I really think this is the whole crux of why everything on our planet is starting to kind of crumble and fall apart. Because we as souls, okay, so our soul, I'm going to start with our soul, is infinite and is made of experience. So right now, we are a fragment of a soul having an experience in a linear timeline. But we're not the whole soul. There are parts of our soul that are currently in parallel timelines elsewhere, having other experiences through different bodies, different eyes, and different dimensions. And we like to, in our linear perspective, say that's a past life, that's a future life, but of course, time doesn't really exist. Time works like a spiral. And to make it even more complex, there's multiple spirals of time that exist in the universe. So we drop into Akashic history on one of these rungs, and we're here with the goal of assembling as much of ourselves from other timelines as we possibly can in the most beneficial way for this one. Like, we're just uncovering constantly new parts of ourselves to add to the whole, which is pretty exciting when you think about it. Like, wow, I don't even know how much potential I have, but I'm here to experience life in such a way that I see myself through new eyes and recreate myself time and time again. And what's beautiful about this, and we were just talking about nature, plants and how they come up exactly when we need them on the planet. That's how soul alchemy is supposed to work. Parts of us from other dimensions and other timelines show up because it's perfect time to support our journey in this life. There's something we're meant to do, something we're meant to heal. We have a contract with another soul, a relationship, intimate or otherwise, that we're meant to support. And all of a sudden, stuff shows up in our field that is here to help us to become more, to expand, to be more conscious, whatever you want to call it. Well, that process got a little backwards on us through time. I talk a lot about reptilian consciousness, if you've been with me for a long time. And we know, of course, that we've had some really karmic and difficult experiences on the planet, and many of us have been focused in those very deliberately. Now, I don't see karma as being necessarily something negative. I think karma is just meant to move us along, right? Because let's face it, if we didn't have something happen to us, we would stay stuck and comfortable in exactly where we are constantly. So what I believe karma to be is these codes that we came with. It's a part of our divine plan, and it synchronizes with the planets and the stars, and all of a sudden we have these new influences and energies and experiences, and we're, built to take that on, right? So all these soul fragments that come to join the party, they're like ascended masters, they're angels. We come with the fragments of ascended masters. Some of us were students of those masters. Some of us were the masters teaching the students. And that's how much support we have. Like, we literally think it comes from outside of us or up here, but it's really who we are. But unfortunately, we have thought so poorly of ourselves, and we've suffered so much, and we've been kind of stuck in the karmic muck of things, that we've anchored in and drawn some parts of ourselves that aren't really the truth of who we are. And we strengthen those identities through time, and those identities have made manifest on the earth or in the collective structures to support them. Corporations, businesses, healthcare, government, right? All of these things that we see on the planet are manifestations of our consciousness, because our identity signals source. We are the straight signal to source, and source is always good. it's going to manifest for us exactly what we need to match our vibration. Well, our vibration has been somewhere, and now it is somewhere else. And now what's beginning to happen is on the planet, a lot of what we've manifested and created through our authentic identities are moving away. Those things, they don't really fit. They don't suit who we are any longer. So these parts of us that have now come in that are higher vibrational, they vibrate faster, they're more conscious, they're taking us somewhere else. And we may be trying to hold on to the things that were from before that helped us to feel safe and comfortable and sourced in a certain way. But what our higher self, our angelic self knows, all of those pieces that came to join the party knows, is we could never go back there. It's not who we are. It's just not who we are anymore. So soul alchemy, soul integration, it aligns with what I see happening on the planet, which the guides call timeline convergence. Pretty fancy, complicated term. But many of you who have done private sessions with know that this happens in our personal lives. All of a sudden, we hit this time where either the rug's just pulled right out from underneath us really fast, or it's kind of rolled up slowly, and surely beneath our feet. Well, that's when all of those new parts of us, those soul fragments that came to join, are energetically rearranging the field for us. So we start to see in physical the stuff that's melting away, that can't hold itself or sustain itself anymore. But we don't know what that new stuff looks like yet because it's in our vibrational field. It hasn't manifested to Earth yet. It's like coinciding and co-creating and magnetizing and all of this stuff. So often what's happened is when we've been in that space between where the stuff in physical is crumbling away and the new stuff hasn't landed yet, we've gotten so wound up and tried to control and rely on those old parts of ourselves that we've anchored in the frequency of things that we don't want. And that's when things start to feel really, really hard. So what I see right now on the planet is a timeline convergence in all areas. And I think this had to happen. And I don't think it's karmic in terms of suffering. I think on the spiral continuum, we had to revisit history. Our consciousness interfaced with that. It saw that we were no longer the people that could uphold the things that we've created before. And we set off a chain of events that is moving physical density into new patterns of light. We just don't know what those new patterns of light are yet. However, many of us have seen them because they couldn't be a potential if we didn't already have some timeline energy here that were holding them in place, right? So those of you who are healers, we've seen medical doctors start using very alternative practices and technologies. We know there are new currencies coming to the planet, right? New ways of schooling our children. Really, our belief structure is what dictates this. So we see all these things coming, but what's happened is we haven't seen them stick. And I get that question all the time, like, why are these new things not holding? Well, in order for the new things to hold, we got to make space, right? The old stuff has a meeting point with the new stuff. And it's like the eye of the storm, That's where we are. It's the quantum realm where the old and the new is meeting. But how we interface with it in every present moment has everything to do with how it lands. And that's how powerful we truly are. That's how we are creators. That's where our free will comes in. So it doesn't surprise me right now that we are up against a lot of things that are restricting our free will, Because if you look at who we've been in every timeline that's collapsing right now, our freedom has been diminished, or we have given it away, or it's been taken away. Every single theme that's playing out, whether you want to look at medical, you want to look at government, you want to look at economy, you want to look at all the theories that are going around and what's true and what's not, and mass vaccines and all this stuff. The issue is freedom. It is choice. It's personal choice, personal power, which is really what we have to move into in order for the new earth to arrive. So I want to break it down a little further. and talk about split of timelines, which is something we talk about a lot in my community. And I know a lot of channels talk about this too. It's, this timeline of the new Earth, or the split of dimensions. And this was something I channeled on very early on that I didn't even understand until we got here, right? So first of all, I don't think there is going to be a second Earth. I don't think, some of us are meant to leave and others are going to stay here. I think that we all have a personal choice and a contract that we get to operate within in this experience we're having. But the way the guides have explained it to me is the split of timelines, although it is focused dimensionally, because that's how ascension works, as we move up dimensions. And think of dimension as just being access to information. Right? Dimension is like taking the elevator up to each floor where you have a different viewpoint. One floor is looking out at the ocean, the next floor is looking out at the trees and the ocean. Now all of a sudden we can see the trees, the ocean, and the stars, right? This is the way I look at dimension. It isn't better or worse than, but it's a universal ascension protocol, law, whatever you want to call it, that helps us to perceive our experience differently. So fifth dimension is just a different perspective. It's a wider bandwidth of perspective than what we had before. That's why we're considering new things. That's all it is. So if we look at dimensional timeline splits, we're looking at the ability to actually have the bandwidth or the space to bring in new things that maybe we were resistant to in the third dimension. But to take it up a notch, to make it even more simplistic, the guides have said the split of timelines is really about who's going to suffer and who's going to live in peace, or joy. And we might think we can't do that right now based on everything that's happening. But I think now is the critical point where we're choosing that timeline. Because if we're going to try to hold on to things or give our power away to something that is going to fix everything for us, we're in a limited perception of our capability. And that's where all those angelic masters, all those soul fragments want to flood in and say, yes, you can actually do this, right? I'm always so amazed in readings that the guides will come in and give this broad brushstroke of who you are. And it's always far bigger than who we think we are or what we're capable of, because they want to push the envelope of what you believe in this life. And that's what I think the split of timelines is all about. Like, how big are you going to believe yourself to be? Regardless of anything out there that's suppressing you in any way. Because there's always the resilience and the creativity of a soul who's gone through all this experience before that you can rely upon. You just have to get in alignment with where that experience is. Because it's not in the mind, right? The soul container that we operate in is so massive. We've gone through stuff like this before. We don't know because we're here, right? Immersed in something very specific, but our soul knows that we've gone through it before. We may have been a healer of people going through a similar circumstance. We may have healed ourselves going through it. There may be something within us we're not even aware we're meant to uncover through all of this, but our soul knows. So if we just anchor in that possibility, right? We're going to navigate this far better than if we're trying to hold on and point fingers. Hi. So the pointing finger part is really important. And I want to bring that in too. Not unlike many of you, I, of course, go down the rabbit hole, have for quite some time and, look at all of that stuff. But if we look at what's happening on the planet today, right, with the split of timelines and everything that's happening, another theme that came in was wartime. So timeline convergence is a massive energy like the Great Flood, for example. That's the historic energy or vibration we're meeting right now. World wars are another one. But perhaps this time it isn't a military or government-led world war. So much as it is now, we're all at war with ourselves, each other, our neighbors, communities, groups of thinking, all of this stuff. And I'm certainly not saying that there isn't a sprinkling of truth out there in all of those things, because I believe that there is. But I actually think truth is such a fast-moving train that it could only be a personal revelation that matters, and how you're going to operate in that truth, right? It's not about what we know so much as what we do. So I just channeled my monthly channeling this past week for those in my community. And I was kind of surprised that they addressed head-on some of these theories and things that are happening in the community. One of them, and I'm just going to come out and say it, being Q, if you follow any of the Q stuff, right? And I'm just going to use that one as an example because there's many more. Again, I'm not saying there's not a sprinkling of truth going on there, but there is also a lot of distortion, deliberately and otherwise, and we have to always look at where we're giving our power away. This is the key. If something you're looking at, studying, following is taking you down the path of giving your power away or humanity's power away to one individual, a group of individuals, a group of ETs, that could never happen. It's just a false matrix. It carries us away from our personal power every single time. And I will tell you that the ETs that I connect with would never, ever get involved in that way because it's a lower astral playing field. There are ETs involved with our government, most definitely. Some of them perhaps think they're doing good, but meddling in our free will is not something higher vibrational beings and guides do. And it's not because they don't want us to thrive and they don't want us to do well. They want that so much. But this is the way it was explained to me. Our physical bodies, when we look at our bodies, just like a soul, our soul manifests through experience. Our bodies are made up of experience. Our muscles, our tissues, our skin, everything is experience. So if they were to change one thing in one timeline somewhere on the planet with one individual or one program, whatever it may be, everything else that's connected to that, humans, plants, animals, earth, Akashic history, stuff we don't even know about, gets changed too. That's how intricately woven we are in all of this stuff. So we think, well, why don't they just take out this guy who's causing all the problems and, give us somebody else? Well, that guy is a reflection of our consciousness. That guy is also an opportunity or a mirror reflection of how we find our personal power to change things. And that's the best way that we can ascend. That's what they want for us. So they will activate the grids and they will raise frequencies up. They will bring messages through conduits like myself and all of you. They'll activate healing gifts. They want us to raise our consciousness so much because they want us to take that path back home. And they will walk with us and provide whatever is necessary to support and assist that, other than meddle and change things. So that's the best advice I can give everyone about tuning into that stuff, right? But in addition, we are trying to resurrect our original divine blueprint, which is unity consciousness, right? It's not self-service. Although I believe that the way that unity consciousness comes together is when we all have within ourselves this love and sense of who we are and what we've lost along the way. Unity consciousness is so incredibly important to everything on the earth, plants, animals, right? All of elementals, humans. If we are so well-intentioned when we are trying to force people to awaken. But the fact of the matter is, we could never do that with what we say, what we know, because every unique soul is meant to awaken in their own way. So if we do this, if we're constantly trying to force, we're anchoring a frequency that we don't want. And guides have talked about this event a lot like a huge frequency field. Well, actually exactly like that. Because I asked them one day, I said, well, what about 5G? Everyone's concerned about 5G. What do I need to know? And they said, that's minuscule compared to what's happening in this frequency field that's being created. Not that they don't concern about 5G or not that it's good for our health, but in the grand scheme of things, they're like, that's about this big. This frequency field is all about communication. So our human water, as we know, is a technology. Everything that we speak to it becomes coded within us. It vibrationally mimics that code and it sends a signal out to the universe. So let's just take a virus, for example. If we had a mass virus going around and the acronym of that virus was flashed in our face 100 times a day and spoken about all day long, and we were interacting with it and we were trying to prove to people that it wasn't right or it was right, now we've coded our human water with a pattern. And that pattern may look the same as somebody who doesn't even believe the same thing that you do. As a matter of fact, we might all be tested for this new virus, and it may be in our human water because it's such a huge, huge thing that we're talking about right now, right? And that's the bigger problem that we have going on, according to the guides, is that we are strengthening patterns that are going to be coded within our DNA for future generations to have to deal with, simply because we're so entwined in arguing the truth and talking about this stuff that it is going to show up everywhere. To compound that, those of you who are here and those of you who are out there, because I know all you guys really well, super talented, gifted, high vibrational, high conscious beings, far more telepathic oftentimes than some others, coding something in your human water, are sending it out as a signal just as powerful as 5G, and could be anchoring, we'll say, reinforcing potentials we don't really want to happen here. But the good news is, I think we are going in the right direction. And I feel as if this could not have happened if that was not the case. And there's several reasons for this, right? The first one being the soul fragments we've talked about. For us to see a mass disintegration of all of this stuff take place on our planet, we have to know we already created the design of something new. And all we're doing is making space for that new to come in. We can slow that process as much as we want. We can complicate it as much as we want. We can tamper with the potentials we've already created as much as we want. But nonetheless, all of this had to start because we were already, I'd say, guides want to say, connected in a sacred design that was different than what we were immersed in before. I personally think that this is true embodiment right now. There are a lot of us on the planet who have awakened, and we look out at the planet, we think people are so not awake. But here's the thing. It isn't so much what you know, but it's your willingness to let go of the things that no longer suit that knowing that is so, so incredibly important. So we may have had a whole community of very conscious or awakened humans who are still going to the job that they know isn't right for them, who may still be subscribing to some government restriction, or, she said it. I had to say it. I know. It's true. Because what we know and what we do have to at some point come into balance and synchronize. It's like non-physical and physical. We can do as much spiritual practice as we want, but it's not going to affect our lives unless we walk the talk, right? Walk the talk of what we are immersed in. So I think this had to happen because those who are in this movement and know that our government isn't really serving us the way that it should be, we're giving away our power to things that we shouldn't be, are now receiving an opportunity to creatively change the paths that they were on before. And again, I think this is embodiment that had to happen because we can't ground the fifth dimension based on what we know. Right? We're here to interact and do the things that we know are right. Yeah. Any questions? Yes. Can you pass her the mic, Ethan?
Hi, Micheila.
Hi.
This might be a little bit redundant, but
That's
I have
okay.
been just thinking about this recently. Back, the whole peace and love thing, kind of growing up around that. And some of us, even as small children, we got that. And we didn't think we had to go through a plague to get to the age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
But the timeline split.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes I feel like, why am I focused in this one? Is it because this timeline needs so much more help as opposed to just being in the utopia already? Does that make sense?
Well, think about yourself as actually being in the utopia, being, on all sides of it, really. That's the way I often see it. But I certainly do sessions every day where the guides say, you chose to be here at this time because. I think that there's no mistake. We're going to focus into a timeline where we most need to serve, and there's something that we come to do. And it doesn't have to be so elaborate as what we're doing at Flower of Life. It's just your everyday interaction as a human, with people, places, things, that is the most important. But in addition to that, I think a lot of us are conduits for running energy. We have, if you've followed my work, we have this new grid, old grid thing going on where the old grid is dismantling. That's another part of what we're seeing on the planet, right? The old grid dismantled, and now all the structures that were tied to it are starting to get shaky and dismantle, right? And we have a new grid. Well, a lot of us have been running energy to that new grid. Some of us are literal gatekeepers, grid workers who came here because they had the bandwidth to allow that from the multi-galactic universe to support Earth. And a lot of those people are changing right now in what they're here to do. Some of us have deliberate on the ground things that we're here to do, but absolutely, I don't think it's any mistake. If you're here right now, you chose to be here, and there's something that we're here to do. But, to your question, to your point, I do often see humans in session who have been on the future or in the future of what we're experiencing now. And they know so much that they came back to try to advance the things that were there here, which is kind of interesting and a little crazy when you think about it. They're really good at explaining that better than me. But we have been in future human timelines where we've created the new structures, and we know what they look like, and we know these new programs to code our DNA and, that are quicker than all the stuff we've been doing in the 3D. So I see a lot of that as well. And then, of course, we have a whole collective of adolescents and kids who are here, and no mistake that this is happening to them too. I mean, I get so sad about the kids all the time. It's just I know it's like a mom thing, like in me, I just like the kids. But even my own kids, and I think, wow, like they chose to be here during this. Like that's amazing when you think about it. They chose to experience this right now because there's something that they came to do. And even though it might stink for a little while, I think they're exactly where they're meant to be in order for that to come to the surface. So if that answers your question. I hear you. A lot of people would love to just tune out, go straight into the future, be on the other side of it. But here's the thing. I mean, I think where we're really being challenged right now is to find the future in the now. To be at peace with what is and to find our joy and, our personal freedoms in this moment. I think that's what's required of all of us. And I don't think it's as difficult as we make it out to be sometimes. I'm going to use my life as an example. I'm certainly not like the master of all of this. I'll tell you right now, I'm, not perfect. However, I created this timeline experience well before all this happened, and I'm very minimally affected, except for when I go out and see how dystopian weird things look. Wow. But my life has just not really been affected or changed, and I love that. It makes me so, I think, it gives me the faith or the courage to keep doing this because I know that everybody else can do the same thing, Like, here's another, and I know you have a question, but I want to add something else, and this is something I wanted to say too. Where it looks like it's going to take a lot of time, push back on that, because even time is changing as we move through this into the fifth dimension. And a lot of people feel this like time speeding up and we can't keep up, and now all of a sudden it's slowed down like big time. And I think what we're observing is how we create time. And in the fifth dimension or in the new earth or whatever you want to call it, our energetic currency runs a bit differently. Like personally, I find that I accomplish way more in less physical time than I ever have before. But I have to let go of the reins of what I believe it's going to take to do that. And I've had to challenge myself because I am a very A-type personality. So when I first started this path, I was like, I have to work, 7 to 7, and I have to make sure I do this much and this, and as I've backed off on that and let go, I'm making a far bigger impact with my work on multiple people with less hours. And it gives me more time to be creative and to do the things that I love. And that's where I think we're going. We're going somewhere where it doesn't take as much time for us to do the things and to source the things that we needed before. And we'll have more personal time and freedom to actually love what we do and be more creative, which is needed. Like, that's right. Like, we need creativity on the planet right now. So that's where I think we're headed. Makes sense. Go ahead, question.
Yay.
Yay.
I'm here. That's like so surreal.
Hi.
So age 16, I'm laying in my backyard and I'm waiting for God to come. Because like that was just like instilled in me. Didn't have any visions. There was nothing. My friends were like going on dates and driving cars. I'm laying in the backyard. And then I started reading Ram Dass, Be Here Now. Thaddeus Golis, Enlightened Man, or what is it? Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. And that resonated with me because I'm lazy. I would have to start working harder to be lazy. That's And I just always in the back of my head, I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I can but then as time went along on my spiritual journey, because that's the only thing that resonated with me, although life took me in different avenues, I still in the back of my head is lazy, man. Like, the world isn't going to awaken without a drive-through. I got to drive through. I'll take a extra large awakening. Because I can't see, right? But then you said something about we have those jobs that we're at. I fix big trucks for the city of Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
But I thought awakening or enlightenment or whatever that thing is that I don't know what I want, because someone has to tell me what I want, because I don't even know anymore. But it's just how I work with guys.
Yeah.
And I tell them that I love them, right? And Dexter kept grabbing a wrench out of my hand, and I said, Dexter, that hurts my feelings, right? Like, I thought that was awakening, where I don't have to change my job, but like try to bring in the feminine more than the dominated kill or be killed thing.
And see, and I don't think so much that jobs that we need are going away, but I think we have an opportunity to realize that they can be done differently as well. So a couple of different messages about what you just said, right? And let's talk about economy first, because I don't think that there are necessarily things from the 3D that we've been doing that have to disintegrate and go away. As a matter of fact, I think this is a really personal journey for everyone. Some of us have bridges where things are just going to modify and change, and other people, have that rug just completely pulled out from them right now. But either way, we are able to now see exactly how much of our personal currency has to be invested in what we do and who we were before. I think that's a really massive theme for us to consider, is how much of our personal currency we were giving away to something in order to source. Because here's the thing, we operate in a source field. So we have everything we need from the second we're born here till the second we die. Now, it may not look like you think it should, like the millionaire around the corner who's got the yacht and all that stuff, because maybe that wasn't for you in this lifetime. But what happens is, or what happened, I believe, in the third dimension was we put conditions in the way of the source field. So we were trained to believe that we had to get a certain job, we had to go to school to get a certain degree, or we weren't going to be able to earn money. It had to look a certain way, we had to work a certain number of hours, and we can look back through all of our tax returns from the last 5 years and say we earned this much because we were paid this wage. But all of that resource came from the source field. It's our belief structure around that made it so. So what happened was a lot of people got stuck in these ideas of time in order to resource money, or effort in order to, source. And we just put the conditions in the way that restricted or limited us. and this happens on both ends of the scale. We have a lot of inequality, right? I talk a lot about hierarchies. The hierarchies are coming down. We have to level the playing field. Right? The guides even said, if we look at things like, what is it, where everyone gets a blank check? No, the stimulus check is one of them. I'm talking about where they're basic, help me. Thank you. Universal basic income. I know these things aren't where we really want to go, right? They're not really the end all be all of where we want to go. But they're interesting vibrational signs of where we're headed, where everybody sources the same amount, right? They're leveling the playing field in some way. So I don't think necessarily the job needs to go away. But I think the way we perhaps identified with the job or were entwined around the job is something that we're breaking apart, and we're freeing up some of that currency to operate differently. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I love what you said about, being the man in the middle of a very manly business and talking about your feelings. And I just feel light workers are dropped into situations, communities, and places where they need to be because they're raising the vibration or they're offering people opportunities to think about things in a different way. So even though you might not see the physical effects of, what you desire in those areas, you are always planting a seed, and it's everyone's free will choice to take that seed and sow it and grow their own garden, right? So that's service. That's why we're here, I think. If we can be our authentic self in any situation, we are going to serve regardless of what we do, right? Or the way we perceive we need to serve. Make sense? Yeah. Any other questions we have online, or is it time to channel? Yeah.
I'm feeling and hearing much more pressure and waves of tones on the sides of my skull. Is this a raise in vibration or a lower one?
Oh, well, it's hard for me to say for you personally. What I will say is the Schumann's been really intense and high. And when I've gone into meditation, it's like rocket ship. I'm out of body. It's that intense. So if you are someone who's very sensitive to sound, which is just a way we interpret light, I can understand why it would be more intense or you'd feel it that way. Even like the ringing in the ears has been really big for a lot of people lately. And I can personally tell the difference when the ringing is coming from the earth versus coming from something man-made in the earth, because it hurts versus being kind of like there in the background, So everyone has the ability to tune in and decipher that for themselves. But yeah, the energies are super, super high right now. And I highly recommend meditation if you can step into that daily, because I had, and it's hard right now. I understand a lot of us are empaths. There's been a lot of anger and fear in the collective. Some days it's been really hard for me to meditate, and I've just thrown myself into physical activity and walks, cooking, baking, all that stuff, which I love. But I did get it back to meditation this past weekend, was like really shocked at how energetic, how the energies felt, how it's just energetically propelled right out of body. One more.
Can this frequency be causing my aches and pains and sinuses, headaches, off and on chills, appetite changes, but no fever?
Wow. Well, again, hard for me to say your personal situation, but I will say I have had intense periods of pain in the body throughout this entire experience, even before that came out of completely nowhere. And I do believe that, like we talked about conduits, people are here with a greater bandwidth to release negative energies from the planet or densities from the planet. A lot of us run that through the meridians of our body. And if you are extra sensitive, that can feel very painful. I have learned some tricks and tips for dealing with that. And again, I'm not perfect at it. But Mary Magdalene's been my mentor on this for a very long time. And she taught me that before the most important part of her soul's assignment on Earth, she purged the pain of an entire population through her body. Like it was to get all of that energy out of the way so she could focus on what she was here to do. And she said it was best for her not to try to heal it with some herbal or remedy, and the second she did, it would turn into something else. It was like her journey to be at peace with the pain, and as soon as she realized that's what it was, it would decompress. Tried it out myself just to see if it works. And I do believe that the perspective you have about your body has a lot to do with how the body responds to these things. So when I make it my own and something I have to heal and figure out, it tends to hold its grip and get worse. When I let it be there and I consider the fact that there's a lot going on the planet that I might be tuning into, it allows me to operate more comfortably in my body. So, okay, all right, so we're in channel now. And those of you who are here, we like to pass around a basket. This is a free event, so do not feel like you have to contribute. But if you can, it goes to our programs and to the rental of the room today. And we use any overage for things like Weekend in Wizardry and things, like that. If you're online and you want to donate, we do have a donate button on our Flower of Life website as well. Again, absolutely not necessary. We have a lot of things in the works, just so you know. We are working on an alternative school, which is coming at the exact right time on the planet, and also a foundation that we'll be sharing more about in the future. So, all right, so we're going to do a channeled experience. We're going to bring in guides, teachers, masters, best suited for all of you who are here, and those of you who are out there. We'll let them bring in a general message today, and then we take questions. So if you're online, feel free to type them in the chat. We're going to prioritize who's here in the room. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll pass you the mic. And we'll just flow with this until time is up. All right. It's a vibrational transmission. I know all of you who are here know that, meaning it's not necessarily about the words, but what they're sending to us in the non-physical that is of most importance and will be integrated. All right, we're going to work with the Lemurians today, as well as Sophia, Earth. I welcome both of them as they step forward and they say, as a one voice, we combine our loving vibrations to speak to you today, especially about the human ascension timeline and what you are immersed in currently. And it is our intention to bring in a different perspective than what you had considered, knowing, of course, that many of you have been focused upon the physical structures. And much of this conversation today has also been focused on the way in which the old matrix is now on shaky physical ground. And of course, we know that the importance of your non-physical vibration is also understood by all of you and how you walk through this experience together. It is not the negation or suppression of emotion that is most important, but the conscious perception of it in real time that we suggest being the most relevant to ensuring that you stay on the path you desire. Because although it is a personal balancing or harmonizing process to feel anger, fear, or any emotion, if it is held on to too long, it reconfigures your energetic signature to one that isn't in your best interest. And we know that many of you are also having personal experiences microcosmically embedded within a mass or macrocosmic one. And we want to focus you there for a moment because we know the power of the human spirit that you embodied within. And we want to bring you back to the realization of what that spirit truly is and how it began. And this is why Earth herself comes in to speak through and with us as the Lemurians. And we do have a very ancient connection to her. Many of us in the Lemurian Collective deliberately practiced breath work and processes that through the root would intertwine us with earth elementals and plant consciousness, even tuning into the crystalline core, because we realized this was the highest path of evolution of our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. But we want to take you into the realization of what Mother Earth contains and what that core truly is as a womb of all creation. You, being born here as a physical soul, have a connection to this mother womb, regardless of gender. It exists within all of you. And as you were born here as a child, coming through the parents and the lineage of your family, you, as a human soul, carried the elemental sound of Gaia herself. Now, that sound of Gaia that exists within her core or within her womb is an ever-changing sound. The way that it operates is it senses and draws magnetically through the connection to all things, the desires of every soul. So regardless of whether you are human or you are a plant or you are a body of water or you are an animal, you maintain this connection as you have come to be a part of this earth experience. So what begins to happen is you carry on a constant conversation with earth in every moment of every day. Although this is unconsciously carried on, every thought, emotion, desire, experience you are having is being captured in the reference of light, a pattern of light that is brought through her meridians and connected or intermeshed with all others who are having the same experience. Now, often what we notice is this sound throughout time has become very muffled and dull. Some of you were born into lifetimes where it was important for you to experience the areas that humanity had been most restricted or unable to grow. And the reason for that was you were here to meet that as a conduit of Gaia herself, knowing you would work in concert and she would experience every emotion, desire, and thought that you would have. She would offer to you constant feedback as to the direction that your soul would most go. Now, we know you understand the concept of a divine plan, and before arriving here in complete connection with what we call God consciousness, which includes all ascended masters, angels, cosmic family members, you looked down upon the earth and you didn't choose just one thing, one lifetime, one reason to come here. You saw a web of consciousness that looked so interesting to you that you wanted to participate with it and make it your own. That means that every problem, every exciting opportunity, anything that you saw that was present within the linear timeline of your parents, your grandparents, the family that you chose, and the earth experience you arrived in, was valid breeding ground for you to universally expand. Because Earth herself is a consciousness. Gaia is meant to also expand. So the two of you together formed a contract, and that contract was based upon your uniqueness, that you could perceive your life however you wanted. You could be taught something and you could challenge that teaching because it didn't suit you well. You could feel into experience and validate those feelings regardless of how anyone else responded. But this insight has been taken away from you because in its authenticity, when you are this true to quantum or present moment reality, the communication that you have with Gaia is most beneficial. It is very similar to a soul contract that you may have for an intimate and loving relationship. If there's something you suppress about yourself in that contract or in that relationship, the reason that the party came to be in your experience is completely invalidated. Even if bringing that authenticity or truth to the surface is steeped in discomfort. Because the willingness to go into very vulnerably the discomfort of a soul's authentic journey is necessary for everything and everyone else that you came to be a part of in terms of human experience. That is the matrix or sacred design. So it is the suppression of this through time that has sent an inauthentic signal through Gaia, manifesting in a lower vibrational frequency field, not one that was harmful, but didn't give you the opportunities that many of you desired. We look at this as another aspect of sovereignty. Although sovereignty may be perceived as a God-given birthright in any dimension, which of course it is the planet you arrive upon that dictates the way that sovereignty is perceived. And what has happened on your physical planet is that sovereignty has been put in the light of some material condition, whether it be material wealth or the ability to source abundance, whether it has been other humans in your life providing the joy that you feel you need that cannot be found within, whether it be the belief in something just because it is convenient that no longer resonates with the truth of who you've become. All of these things skew the signal. So what is happening right now from our Lemurian vantage point is that your signal not only to source but also to earth is truly what is being rectified and rebirthed. It is not that that communication from the past is no longer valid. Everything that you are and everything that you've experienced is meant to come along with you on the journey of becoming. You would not have experienced it had it not been of this significant value. Yet, what Earth is requiring from you now, in order to surge through her electromagnetically connected fields into the others that are struggling most, is the belief in yourselves that you could never be restricted by something outside. That you have the divine birthright that we consider a godlike activity to be in the realm of your fullest creativity, authenticity, and truth. To let go of the need to restrict it to some definition that you've been taught in the past, or to conform to something in order to be accepted or to thrive. It is that conformity that we believe has been some of the most difficult energetic signals that have manifested into form on your planet. It is not that you are not meant to unify and remain connected to all or to what we call the one. It is the way in which that one has been upheld that can no longer be. Through the desire to be the same, you have negated the most valuable currency that Earth requires of you and is held within. That authentic signal and truth is truly the opportunity you have right now to feel into an absence of all other things. And it is the evidence of that movement within that you are seeing play out in the clearing of toxin-laden air and water, or the reappearance of animal and plant collectives that perhaps you haven't seen en masse before. We look at this as a very positive sign for where all of you are headed. And we want to give one final message, and then we are all pleased to take questions. The hierarchical structures that you often speak of in these gatherings are not just physical. They are within you. The inequalities that have been reinforced through time, whether they be race, gender, or economic oriented, could not have been maintained in this high speed of vibration that Earth herself has achieved. She has not achieved it alone. She has achieved it through you, which shows us that alchemically there is a mass change going on within your inner energy fields. We look at these reconnections that you're making, not unlike that of the new grid that brings Earth into a beneficial position within the galactic universe. You are all now positioned to bring yourself into new beneficial positions on your planet. They might not look as the mind had perceived, but Nonetheless, they are a part of the divine plan that you knew was coded within you before coming. And that rebirth of your human energy field starts with the way you perceive every moment. We've been so pleased and honored to bring this message forward, and we're also pleased to take questions.
This is for Mary. For some reason, she resonates with me. And it was interesting that you said something about her earlier about taking on the pain of an entire civilization, I think you said. Anyhow, I just want a bio of her, like to understand her better than just what's been recorded in history. I was born a little girl. I used to play in the sand, but I don't know, whatever. Make me understand more about her and what it was in the past that helped the human race.
The story of my past goes beyond just the incarnation that many of you are aware of. So I will begin by saying it would be quite impossible to give you the overall picture of how many incarnations I have been present upon the earth, and also in multi-galactic form, coming back to the earth as a perceived god or goddess to support various timeline energies. What I wish to bring forward, though, is an understanding that perhaps many of you had not considered and applies greatly and deeply to what you are facing currently as humans on the planet. As a very young child, I was groomed for the position of awakening that many of you stand within today. Working within the timeline of the Master Jesus was something that my Akashic record showed, not only as the energies were translated to me by the ancient teachers in mystery schools that I attended, but also through my own dream state and ability to intuit. So at a young child, I had already seen a version of what I would attend with that Christ and many others who were a part of that timeline. Imagine as a young child tuning in to some very fearful and difficult event, to feel challenged by what would come and not knowing exactly when it would arrive. This is something that I struggled with greatly as a young child and even an adolescent. But it was not given to me such that I would be in fear, but the fear that it evoked was my greatest practice. Because I was taught and began to focus time and time again upon the source of the fear that would arise. Although it was known to me what my assignment entailed, it was shown to me that the fear was often coming from some unknown aspect of that part of my experience. I was either putting it into the light of some projection that would skew its manifestation from its original intent, or I was receiving insights and knowings from something outside of me that was complicating my thought process. I was taught always to go inward to what I did know in the moment and to inventory and discount any thoughts that would take me outside of that moment. This was practiced in so many different ways early on in my childhood, even at times that I was taken through underground passageways and meant to trust those who I had not known before, where I was given deep insights through the pineal to follow and engage with and come to some realization about the truth of myself in the process. This may have seemed like a game at a very young age and was presented similar to a human scavenger hunt on your planet, where discoveries of crystals and elements were found within the earth. But it was the experience of that that was most important to me. By the time I reached the end of any vision quest, I had already attained what was needed within. And so I leave you with this. It is not what you can control in the outer world that is of most importance. It is not invalidating the fear, but exploring it that is of support. And it is the knowing that the experience you walk through in every moment is the reason that you have come. The wisdom and insights that you are here to gain can only come through being fully immersed in the experience. For by the time you get to the end, you have already walked through the most important part.
I've been experiencing a lot of muscle twitches and like many muscle spasms in my physical body. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how all of these changes are affecting our physical bodies right now.
Yes. So we are Archangel Michael. We speak on behalf of a Ascended Master Collective, and there are many who speak through this voice. And of course, it is a unique answer for every human who is here because you are all designed very uniquely to interact with energies. But what we see happening right now are that the electromagnetic signals coming through Earth are so strong that many of you are receiving upgrades in your extrasensory gifts. We've alluded oftentimes to a connection between the chakras, that they are meant to work consecutively. And although they're very valuable singularly on their own, as they each carry their own assignments and are connected to some purpose, when they work together, it is not unlike the crystalline core of Gaia now being present within your etheric field. So when we have much muscle twitches in a physical body, they are an electromagnetic adjustment or signal to some communication. For example, if you have a muscle spasm simply for a physical reason, there may be some tight muscle, joint, or tissue that isn't even related to the location of the twitch, but the twitch is an announcement from your nervous system and etheric and electromagnetic communication that something needs to be brought to balance. When humans begin to utilize these extrasensory tools, they begin to make adjustments within their frequency field that brings the physical body into balance. Oftentimes, this can be a time-traveled event. For example, this channel has access to the Akashic records and is working in multi-dimensional locations right now throughout the universe. And those dimensions are far different vibrationally than the one in which her body currently sits. So there are adjustments electromagnetically that are made within her muscles and tissues to help bring that information to the surface of the earth. So any quick muscle twitch or adjustment that you're having, especially at a time when you believe that you are telepathically communicating or channeling, is just confirmation of the high vibrational field that you're interacting with and how different it is from the one that your body is currently situated in. We see this also at times when humans are dreaming or are in deep time-traveled states. And this can be looked at as not necessarily a movement or a twitching of the body, but an inability of the body to move. These are times when the light body is returning from such a high dimensional experience that it takes a while for the integration of that memory. And it takes a few moments for the body to actually catch up and synchronize with its own light. So this happens in many different ways for many different humans, but we certainly believe that the high Schumann is another conduit, or we'll say catalyst for this, that some of you may be feeling into vibrationally and the body is adjusting to.
Being Archangel Michael just came in, and whoever else is welcome to. Just a couple days ago, a good friend of mine were speaking together on Zoom, and she has many gifts, and we were sharing our gifts with each other. And while she was talking, she had said, "There's a being behind me, a very strong, powerful being, and they would like to talk with you after we're done talking." So after that, I did connect with that being consciousness, and the consciousness came right in my body and said that they are the army of Archangel Michael, of all the high light spiritual bodies. And and let me know a little bit about, like, being that the wars or the lots have happened in the spiritual realm with the darker and light forces, and that now we have agreed to come as physical beings to actually experience this on the physical level, to bring things back in balance and harmony, and that I am one of the conduits for it, and there's many others here. So I'd just like to have more maybe information with that, of that light body of the army of Archangel Michael.
Yes, we are Archangel Michael. We want to share on several different levels about what you have just spoken of. And remember, in order for an ascended master to be present within this space, speaking to all of you, for example, you must be matching the frequency of that master. This is why some might come to this experience or this transmission and others may not. It may not be that they are not as high vibrational as you, but they may need to intersect with other forms of consciousness, whether they be cosmic, earthly, or otherwise. First, we see that many of you, before coming to Earth, choosing this timeline, knew as ascended Earth beings or cosmic entities that you had been through so much experience, that you had the crystalline container to carry the fragments of many masters. This is truly how ascended masters come back to the earth and bring their imprint to a timeline they've never been on before. You may believe that ascended master Saint Germain or Metatron, for example, can only speak to you through some channeled transmission or must come in some trance contact. But you carry those fragments with you every single day. Often it is your awakening to them that amplifies their potential to be put into some valuable use. So when we allude to an army of ascended master Michael, for example, it is not unlike your own soul carrying multiple experiences on multiple timelines and focused in multiple fragments. Archangel Michael is that massive. Michael has been here on the planet as a physical soul in a physical body. Michael has come in to be a teacher and a student. Michael has come in to be a healer and to be healed, not unlike you in many incarnations. Yet, what ascended masters have the opportunity, or we'll say availability, to work with that many humans don't, is they are masters because in a single incarnation, they were able to integrate God consciousness. What that means is they accentuated a pure connection through their energy fields to God and were able to integrate it into their physical bodies and share it with others. This is like a full merging of every fragment that ever was, is, or has been into one physical body. Think of yourselves as doing this now. Actually being on the process in this incarnation of bringing more and more fragments of yourself, ascended masters, gods, teachers, cosmic beings into your energy field. And as you do, you're going to become far more like that ascended master or cosmic family member than you were before. But there are certain lives that we live on this planet and on others that are very pivotal. They are ones in which we reach a threshold where we have learned so much and we've had so much experience that it coincides together in one fatal swoop. And that is ascended mastery. So when we come to mentor with you, it means that you have reached a point in your consciousness that you have now activated that fragment. And you may be perceiving it as separate of yourself, but it exists within you for a great purpose, because there is something that coincides with what you are here to do with that assignment or path of Michael in so many different ways. Now, in addition to this, you've brought up the armies and the light and dark and the analogy of how there are many here who are in this battle of light and dark. And we must speak to that as well, because we want to clarify what we see light and dark truly as. What's happened here on the planet is dark has become skewed from its original context. We know that many of you are familiar with the symbol of the yin and the yang, for example, being the light and the dark. always interacting with each other. This is simple contrast. Because if you were here as pure light and never intersecting with some contrast to that light, you would never expand your light. So not unlike the seasons where you are going through periods of dormancy and then periods of activity, light and dark are meant to activate you to continue to move forward and become more of who you are. But through many activities of councils, collectives, and consciousness that have been here in the past, and the way that humanity has been focused into service to self, a new model of darkness has arrived. And we simply look at it as the darkest Akashic history on your planet being strengthened and repeated over and over again. But the most important thing we want to say about this is it's far easier than you think to actually change that darkness back into its original state of contrast and challenge. And that is through the realization that you are an ever-present energy of God that is love. And as you've separated yourself from some of the most discordant patterns and acts upon humanity, putting it out there and separate of yourself, you have lost your greatest strength or power to feel the love within for those who cannot feel it themselves, because this is how crime and violence has been inflicted constantly upon your human planet. It is not the desire or the will of those to do bad so much as it is an attempt at balancing and finding that inner love or God that has been missing for so long. And the more that you bring your authentic and true self to every situation and meet it in the highest consciousness possible, you're anchoring the original love that you were born in and designed to be a part of, which is God consciousness, wholeness, all that is. So we see that much of this darkness is going to begin to reverse simply because the way that you will perceive others is like the self. This is what unity consciousness requires, and where you are headed as a human collective.
Do you agree that this event that's occurring globally is intended to help make us view the world and each other more globally, and that new, more appropriate leadership around the world will arise?
We are the Pleiadians, and we certainly do agree that that is an outcome or a potential that is embedded within this massive energy, because the way in which you see yourself has everything to do with what you see. You are a co-creator in every experience that has ever been on the earth. So if there is a government, the manifestation of that government comes through the collective consciousness. That means that there is a potential, and that potential is chosen, strengthened, and comes to ground. But there is never one potential. There are multiple potentials, and you are not going through any one event. There are multiple events happening, happening at the same time. We see so many opportunities beyond the one that you have spoken of. But where we want to bring this question is to a higher vantage point. And it is aligning yourself with the potential that you desire for this self, such that it can overspill into the collective that is most important. When humanity finds itself separate, especially if a soul is going through times of loneliness, it is required of that soul or that consciousness to recalibrate their inner world. We never find ourselves separate from other humans without it being the greatest opportunity for our highest transition. So to see a planet with so much separation and distinct physical manifestations of separate energy is something that must be recognized as present for your highest evolution. Even though it is looked at in a very challenging and difficult light, it is providing the opportunity for you to come closer to your soul's perfect journey, not one that could ever be constructed outside of you or is affected by anything outside of you, but only manifests from within. You've mentioned governments and new structures of government coming in, and we certainly want to speak to this because we think it's an important statement and a very incredible part of what is taking place in this timeline collision. Government itself is not wrong. Many of us operate in dimensions where there are councils. These councils are not operating in the same intention as your government, but there is a collective manifestation of those that are best suited to oversee certain planets and stars or to co-create with other races. It is not because they are better than, for example, or they have some wisdom or insight that is above any other. It is their willingness to be in resonance and love so much for their collective that they make personal insights and inquiries into the best way that every single being can interact and thrive. And this has never been the case on your planet. It has been a distortion that your government provides this amount of safety and security, but it has only been in pockets of consciousness or through race or gender orientations, for example, where this is played out. And the reason is it has never been in the highest integrity of all. And when we look at the process of electing a government official, even though this differs in different communities and geographic locations, we have to note that it is always your vibration that is aligning with that potential. Any leader that is put into position is a manifestation of the collective consciousness in that region. And we say this with the highest and utmost respect, knowing that many of you have lost respect for these leaders. It is really showing more and more of who you are not and who you are becoming. So if you are to look at your government agencies as a reflection or manifestation of what you were, and that this opportunity is showing you that you are going somewhere new, the governments that you may manifest in the future may look a bit different. And we see this transition in your potentials, and we want to bring it to you not because it's a valid prediction. We as the Pleiadians know that the second we make a prediction about where humanity is going, the vibrations here are so strong that it could change very quickly. And there are a million potentials that you have as a human collective. However, we do see an interesting breaking apart of the government structures that have been overseeing mass areas of your globe, and more of a propensity to bring in community access to laws and regulations or oversight, we'll say. We don't believe that this is going to necessarily cause the problem, that there'll be smaller communities with their own governments. But at the same time, we cannot negate that it lends itself better towards your sovereign and free will that you're bringing back together with the structure. Because if smaller communities are to elect councils or governments to oversee their area, it is far easier for you to choose on the globe where you desire to be and interact with those councils. But still forward, we let go of the need for any one ruler or leader for any one group of people. And we see you move through a time where there'll be a complete obliteration of that. The reason being not chaos, that chaos will ensue, but what was before is going to be so invalid to who you've become that it will simply be ignored in a way that it cannot any longer hold on to you as humans or lay down specific laws or put restrictions in place that are global. Although it may seem you're not going in that direction, we certainly see that the potential for you to move outside of this exists, and it is all within the choice of the human collective in their own personal reality to strengthen that. That means the way that you interact in your own homes, in your families, in your relationships and communities has everything to do with how you move through this time to the other side. Ultimately, what we envision is that humanity will operate very similarly to many of our star systems, where councils will be in place to oversee certain aspects of earthly structures, but they will be quite different than before because they could never be focused in a hierarchical or material way. This is truly what you are healing right now. The infiltration of those who are focused only on material wealth or gain is something that humanity structurally and vibrationally no longer resonates with. And your desire to fight up against that in physical is only short-lived to your ability to believe and feel it within you. The more that you strengthen that potential within, the more that you will see it manifest outside.
From my own experience, and it seems if you look at the collective, at least within, I don't know, however many years, I've been here 60 plus, seems humans always have to learn the hard way. It's like you say about learning what you don't like in order to know what you like. Is that evolving and changing? And are the young people who are coming in now maybe not have to go through so much of that as we've had to go through?
This is Archangel Gabriel. He's very pleased to answer this question. And of course, this is multi-layered with many different topics and insights. But we want to explain again that karma and suffering are not consecutive in their definitions. You come not to suffer so much as you come to meet human history with a new consciousness. But what has happened is you've met that history with resistance. So oftentimes, for example, and we'll bring in the reality that many of you are coded in your carbon DNA with very discordant patterns like disease, for example. That disease, that pattern of disease is something that can be activated within you or may not. But if it does, what begins to happen is you set off a chain of events in addressing experiences with preconceived outcomes and definitions. So for example, even though that pattern of cancer exists, it could never look the same as any other human on the planet. It could never be defined, diagnosed, or projected in linear time the same as any other human on the planet. The problem is you've been taught to look outside for some standard and some navigation tool and have put suffering and resistance in the way of a path that needed to clear through you, perhaps momentarily or far shorter than what you experienced it. So yes, we see that, of course, coming here at this time on the planet, you knew you had the ability to address some of the most discordant patterns of history that were present on the planet. But it has always been your free will choice to suffer through those or to create them bigger. And we don't say that as a judgment because we take very seriously the plight of the human condition. It is something that we look down on and desire for you to change and see that it already is. So what we believe will happen is as humans spiritually awaken or become more conscious, they will simply meet challenges differently than they have in the past. Letting go of the need to control or to define or diagnose anything as rigidly as they have before. Because in that one pattern of cancer, there is an entire spectrum of outcomes. You may have this pattern arise because you were meant to interface with a brand new technology that can heal it on the planet. But because you suffer and struggle through the pattern, you are directed away from some beneficial healing that matches a vibration that you cannot hold. So where we are taking humanity is understanding vibrational alignment, not that you should accept having some disease, but to stay in the range of the present moment with what is, in a way that perhaps you've never been able before. What future generations will be dealing with is less of the restrictive definitions and suffering around these potentials, and more ability to coincide with ways to heal them. Reason being, every generation that comes to the planet is also a reflection of your consciousness. So those of you who are here, who have become awakened and expanded yourselves, are not necessarily leaving less negative patterns behind, because to look at the earth as a whole and to look at the Akashic records as a whole of the earth, you must understand there are multiple patterns of difficulties and challenges that you've faced throughout time. None of that matters as long as you are able to meet it with a different consciousness. So we'll take war, for example. The history of war repeats itself constantly on this planet. In your schools, war is taught and reinforced as some historic line of study. But it is the fear of that war happening again that continues to strengthen it in every home, between relationships and neighbors, and on your globe, religiously or otherwise, over physical resources. So war vibrations play out because of the way that the consciousness is meeting that war. There is an entire plethora of history that has yet to be shared with humanity that shows times of peace. But we don't often see these times of peace being a part of your elementary school history books. So whatever you are reinforcing through your perception is a looking glass into your collective hologram. And that is what we see changing. The new schools that are arising through this experience right now may be focused on history differently. They may be bringing back times of ancient history where there were enlightened civilizations and teaching about what these civilizations practiced in order to reach spiritual heights. This is quite different than focusing on the wars of the past. This is truly what sets future generations up to work with karma differently, because it begins to connect them with beneficial timelines of the past versus those that have been so onerous and challenging. History is a wide open spectrum. The Akashic realm is massive. It is really what you choose to interact with through how you meet the now that is navigating you through karmic situations.
Will vaccines affect us if we're awakened?
We're the Arcturian Collective, and we're very pleased to answer this question. Well, we first have to say that every human has the potential to change material energy in their own structure based on how they perceive it. This is often recognized as the placebo effect on your planet. There are a control group of humans that are given a certain medication that is a sugar pill, and others are given the real medication. And you may measure no difference in either collective in terms of their rate of healing. This is because of the belief that is had within. That being said, we look at the vaccine program as carrying some of the most discordant harmonics to your frequency field that have been perpetuated through time. Metallics are something that we most concern about on your planet. And if we look at humanity as a whole, we believe that your environment has set you up to communicate with you in a very restrictive way. There is so much metallic energy in everything that you intersect with, even your air right now, that what's going on in the body is, we'll say, a chain of events that can't hold its balance. This affects your endocrine system. It affects your hormones, for example. It affects your adrenals. Every organ and tissue that is meant to communicate begins to work separately of each other. So consciousness is something that can perpetuate signals into the universe, and as we've mentioned in this transmission, to the earth. What happens, we notice, is these signals will naturally navigate humans to the best suited medications, holistic or otherwise, practices, programs, healers, tools. But often there is a belief construct that stands in the way of matching those different timelines. So when we look at vaccines, we believe that it suppresses your signal to actually live in a way that is resilient, to live in a state of longevity, because the Earth and the galactic universe is no longer respondent or connected to your body due to the metallic frequencies that are standing in the way, actually creating a sound that doesn't mimic that of Gaia Sophia herself. So we look at consciousness as coming in to make the choice as opposed to keeping the vibration out. Although as we say this, we know that there are many adept healers on the planet that have discovered different technologies as well as non-physical practices to negate these energies regardless of whether or not they've been placed in the body. And we acknowledge that those will continue because there are so many who have been subjected to metallics in their environment that it is important that those who are here as a collective of healers rise up with these technologies that have come from ancient civilizations and are being modified to your structure today, as well as those who are able to work within the human waterways and DNA to change realities. So we see consciousness as being the deciding factor for how you interact with these opportunities or not, and who you magnetize to support you if you choose to participate with them. That can bring you into complete and total balance and eradicate their what they have created within the body.
Can the guides explain how the increase in the Schumann resonance affects our emotional and physical body?
Yes, we are the Pleiadians. We're very pleased to bring this insight in. As we've mentioned, the Schumann resonance is a capture. It is a capture of all vibrations of all beings on the planet. It is sent out through her into the field. It is an electromagnetic connection. Now, it is a good sign to see these spikes in Schumann because it is a confirmation of awakening. When there is a higher signal being sent out through Earth, it is a direct reflection of the signals that you are also holding. But remember, all of you are at varying speeds, weights, and dimensional experiences with different extrasensory tools and energy fields. And emotional frequencies that are very sensitive on some advanced souls can certainly be affected by these harmonics. The reason being, emotions themselves are harmonic. Although you can't hear an emotion, we can certainly measure the vibration of an emotion and how that emotion is restricted or expressed. So when we look at the Schumann resonance, we also are looking at the way in which the emotional speed of vibration is being balanced or experienced outside of balance within all of humanity. So sometimes those spikes can be directly related to expansive amounts of fear. And you may think that you are receiving the fear in the body and this is not something that you desire. But we also have to consider that when emotion is expressed, it is a positive. So sometimes we will go through very difficult challenges where a certain emotion is at the forefront for us for a very long time. And although it is very difficult for us to go from beginning to end of that experience, that emotion that was released left so much space within us to create new things or to bring in new information. So anytime you feel an emotional connection to the Schumann, know that the empathy or telepathy that you possess is also very high. And sometimes you're purging that emotion on behalf of multiple humans or the human collective. In addition to this, we know that man-made frequencies can complicate what we are speaking of. So some of you who are subject to man-made frequencies such as Wi-Fi signals or electromagnetic fields in the earth, for example, can become very extra sensitive to the Schumann in this way. But also remember, paying attention to the emotion that arises or observing it as it comes to the surface is the true catalyst for how you find comfort again. We notice oftentimes there is a quick judgment on behalf of humans when they feel a certain way. Either they're experiencing a weakness within themselves or there's something they haven't spiritually ascended to be. These compound your ability to relieve density and let the emotions that are clearing be a beneficial process even for you. So we always resort back to how you perceive or are the observer of any experience in the body, physically, emotionally, mentally, or otherwise, as being the most significant catalyst for its transmutation.
Astrologers are predicting how things are catalyzing and even saying to relocate. That feels like panic energies are on the rise this weekend. What are the guides saying about the planets and what's going on with the cosmos in our star system?
Yes, so we are the Lemurian Collective, and we want to answer this question directly because we do believe it is so incredibly important to redefine what you are experiencing. The astrological influences that are determined and explained by many on the planet are only a potential that you hold. What we look at astrological influences to be is portals. They are times where we are passing through from one experience to another, and there are energetic influences that are co-creating with our divine plan. So we want to take it singular first. You chose your birth date, which is one of the most significant portals you could have arrived within. Knowing the time and the location that you chose was perfect to synchronize with the Akashic field and planetarily bring in the energies that were best suited to allow you to interface with the experiences that would evolve you. Collective consciousness is no different, and many ancient civilizations that studied the stars and planets knew that these were great times of convergence of past history with present moment potential. They also knew that they could tell what direction they should go in as nomads or ancient tribes based on these potentials, simply because the earth may be changing in one direction or another. But what's most important to note is that you are not any longer the humans that those ancient civilizations or tribes showed up to be. So every timeline is experiencing astrological influences and alignments differently to their consciousness. And it means that the same astrological influence in a different timeline or civilization could have looked completely different than it does now. So we want to give you an example, and we have alluded in this transmission previously to timeline convergence. We know that the history of the Great Flood is something that you are experiencing again. And we certainly don't say that in a state of fear for you to believe that there is going to be some mass weather event that will clear the planet. But what you are looking at right now is a very similar vibrational influence than what happened in that time. So at the time of the Great Flood, a timeline convergence took place where incredible astrological alignments converged and a variety of codes were synchronized and activated. And at that time, the consciousness of the humans on the planet, even the plants and the animals for that matter, dictated potential outcomes for that influence. So you, being in the same influence, are not having a great flood at this time, but you're certainly seeing an opportunity or a passage through from one reality to another. So if you are a sensitive human, for example, one who has great intuitive insights or high consciousness, and are connecting with some of these theories or prophecies, it's important for you to feel into the relevance of the body and the heart and the mind and how they resonate with you in the moment. Because if they're taking you down a path of fear, all you're doing as a consciousness is strengthening the potential of the outcome of that fear. But if you are to look at the influence as something that you are able to shape, just like the potter molds the clay on the wheel, you have the ability to fare far better in terms of the outcomes and manifestations in your personal life and on the planet. So there is no one influence that is meant for you to suffer. There are only influences that are meant to ascend you. And it is the consciousness that you meet them with that is the determining factor for how they are co-created by all.
What did the guides say about us making statements like, I do not consent to this or that?
We are the Pleiadians, and we know that these statements certainly come from the rising freedom and sovereignty that many of you are beginning to feel. And at the same time, that statement may seem not only physical in nature, but also vibrational. But we have to consider that whenever you are strengthening something through a statement that matches its outcome, you have the ability to anchor in a reality you do not desire. We'll bring back the example of government. Before many of you have even gone to the voter box, you have strengthened the potential of a president, a leader, before they have been voted upon physically. And often what we see is there is so much hatred spewed at the candidate that you do not desire, that they are often the ones that show up in physical and become voted in. And the reason is not because a mass number of humans voted for them so much as it is your vibration matched that potential. So if you're constantly stating that you do not consent to something that you do not want, you're actually strengthening the potential of what you do not want by continuing to pay attention to it. Now, we recognize there is a need at this time also for humans to state that they are not willing participants in mandates that the government is bringing to your planet. And we have deep appreciation for the breaking free of these hierarchical structures that must take place for you to truly ground the new earth. But we believe the best way that happens is through your peaceful protest. That means that in your own life, you are peacefully still in stillness and in quiet, creating the reality that you desire beyond any perceived restriction. Because that is just as powerful as stating, we'll say even more powerful than stating that you do not consent. Because as you simply say that you are not going to practice whatever is meant for you to be a part of and find your way creatively into new timeline realities, you've created the new earth in the microcosm or the hologram of your personal reality that bleeds out and accentuates that of all others. So sometimes we recognize that your desire in physical to state things and to reinforce things isn't necessarily the best vibrational path to take.
Will we see the collapse of the dollar and our current economic paradigm in the coming months?
Yes. We are the Pleiadians. The declining values of your stocks and currencies are yet a reflection of the unworthiness that many of you have felt within, as well as how you have placed the definition of source on something outside of the self that is material. And this is bound to happen as human beings accentuate their consciousness. The reason being, everything is imprinted with a vibration or a story, an experience or an energy. And we want to give you an example first, and then we will speak to what we see going on economically on your globe. Within your personal life, there may be a group of humans you are participating with who have a certain belief. It perhaps is religious in nature. And as you accentuate your consciousness, as you vibrationally change, you may no longer believe in what you did before. And that group has imprinted now a belief that it operates within. Even though religion may no longer be the topic of conversation, there is still something that draws those humans together commonly that exists within them. And because you no longer believe this, you may find yourself resonating less and less with those humans. And as you do, new humans arrive to take their place. You may go through a challenging time where you find yourself alone for a period. Again, only a physical recalibration of the vibrational imprint that is changing within you. We see your vibrational currency being exactly the same way. It's been imprinted in inequality. It has been imprinted in the vibration of service to self. And it no longer matches the imprint of who you are becoming. So it is bound to change the structures and relationships to money that have been stable on your planet for decades. That being said, and not to put you in fear, we go back to our statement about source energy and the source field. It was never the physical currency that you were sourcing. You have always been sourcing through the field around you that is a part of your divine plan. But it is the belief that you've put in that physical means that has made it so. So where many of you are moving personally is to a new way of sourcing. It doesn't mean that your position of work is going to change. It doesn't necessarily mean your entire life has to change. For some of you, it will. But it means that the source energy, the source field, is working differently and responding to your imprint or signal far differently than it was before. So if the old job is falling away, it could be because the currency that was coming to you through that position of work no longer matches who you are, and a new position of work is showing itself, and currency will begin to flow differently. We can't negate the validation of open source as a fifth dimensional potential that enables you to source far easier and quicker than you would as you effort in physical. This is not to say that you cannot place any condition around your worth, but that open source is truly the platform upon which those creative timelines are built. Now, on a global scale, what we see is the dismantling of your economic system because it is making space for a new one to arise. We do see that a new currency system has already been born. And that, although perhaps looking as if it might be the answer for future generations, it truly hasn't evolved to the degree that it is yet to evolve. We see a leveling out of currencies on your planet, meaning that those who have less will have more, those who have more will have less, not because you're meant to suffer, but we know that unity consciousness requires that all humans have the same amount of resource. And as a matter of fact, we believe that those of you who are here to experience this timeline are meant to have the most abundance possible to bring in the new structures that are going to require it in the fifth dimension. So we don't necessarily see currencies going away. What we see is that many of you are preparing to source differently and more expansively to allow those structures to be put into place. We always note that transitions don't mean that we go completely without. And this is why in certain areas on your planet, you are seeing supplemental incomes and things coming in to meet and match humanity. We know that this is not all in integrity just yet, but we also believe that many of you are coming to the point where some of the old beliefs that you have about sourcing had to be rectified so that you could intersect with some of the support that is going to be reconfigured as you walk this timeline. We look at the early years of 2022 as being a gateway into the new economic structure that you desire, but it will take several years for it to fully arrive. We look at also the way that you are meant to exchange currencies as a bit different than it was before, where it was tracked and counted by a central organization. That central organization can no longer be active where you are headed now, and that may put some of you in fear because you believe it was the security that you had in order to maintain some income. There are some who will still maintain that income from a dying source until it is no longer there and a new one has been brought to light that will replace it. So we are not concerned because we simply see you going through a transitional time in which what was old is going to reconfigure and what is new is still coming to the surface. But remember, it doesn't have to take as long as we project. Linear time is truly a figment of your imagination. Those of you who are here understand that the spiral of time we have spoken of is the only one that operates, and it means that your perception of time makes it so. So if you believe it is going to take a long time for your governments to straighten out economics on your planet, you are holding in a position that you don't want to maintain. But if you have the faith that you are being carried to your next destination willingly and with support, you will find that you will transition ahead, perhaps, of others that are unwilling to let go.
Any advice of how a past Lemurian can access the teachings of the I Am consciousness?
Well, the Lemurian Collective is one that knows this program is something that in your mind looks very singular to our experience. However, we know the mighty I Am blends itself through all dimensions, through all ascended masters and cosmic families. But where we want to take you is to the core of the question, which is to force an outcome of something that you desire to happen now. Any knowledge from the Akashic realm, not unlike everything that we have brought to light in this transmission, is met by matching vibrations. So if you look at the history that's come to light on your planet thus far, everything from ancient civilizations that has been brought to light or collectively accepted in many circumstances has been a match to your vibration. So as you continue to ascend, what will begin to happen is relevant Akashic knowledge will show itself on the earth. You don't even have to send humans out to do archaeological digs. Those archaeological digs are actually the result of some non-physical matching process that has been underway for quite some time. So if you take this example and you put it into your personal experience, what you'll understand is as you work on your consciousness and you are present with and accepting your present moment reality without trying to stretch too far into the future and control outcomes, you're always receiving everything you need in divine order.
Could the guides talk a little more about how we can work with the human water effectively to help the collective?
Yes, so we are the Atlantean Dolphins, and we're pleased to enter and offer some guidance on this. We come forth today because the crystalline waters are our dimension, especially those within the earth, although we do resonate in other dimensions as well. And we look at the water within Gaia as one of your most potent technologies. We know that the accentuation of your planet has resulted from the crystallization of waters to begin with. So when we look at your ascension timeline, we must commend you, because although you don't see the results that you desire with physical eyes, there is so much that we see within the core of Gaia and within her crystalline waters that is very encouraging to us. What we do is we tone and sound our sonics into the water such that it is at a high frequency of love. Much of what you hear from us, although seemingly communication between each other, is actually a part of our assignment to bring these vibrations through Earth and to you. It is not unlike a Pleiadian ship, for example, in your atmosphere, activating Earth grids, or working through a healer. There is always the desire to expand consciousness so that outcomes can be more aligned with who you're becoming. But within your crystalline waters, within your bodily waters, there is the echo of every sound that you possess, every sound that you make, every sound that you receive, and everything that you interact with. So if we were circling within your energy field and within your waters, what we would desire is to echo the vibration of love as much as possible. That means to the self in the way that the inner language of your mind to your body is spoken. That means in the interaction with other humans, spoken words and written words. But also to take an inventory of everything that you are interacting with in physical, whether it be the programming of a television show, your media, social or otherwise, even whether it be the music that you are listening to on a daily basis. Because every word, tone, and sound that is communicated to, through, and around you is patterning the water in your bodies. Now, of course, we haven't even gotten into some of the more physical means that have an impact on the water. Much of what has been spoken of today in this transmission being metallics, for example, or toxins. But remember, these are sounds as well. So there are new technologies coming to the planet to crystallize your human water to higher vibrations, in which it naturally releases these toxins and metals, and even dense communications and emotions that have been stuck there. So to reiterate and make this message very simple, speak kindly and compassionately to yourself and all others. And as you do this, you are vibrating the highest frequency possible within all of your cellular and bodily water.
As a Catholic and New Ager, is it really useful to pray to the Rosary and do pilgrimages to shrines like Lourdes, Mount Saint Michel, and the Holy Land? It is remarkable that the second glorious mystery is the Ascension, which appears to be a reference to our planetary shift of consciousness to 5D.
Well, we get Jeramiah, and he's very pleased. He says, when you are on these pilgrimages and you are stating prayers and mantras to different religious statues and different religious beliefs are being practiced by you, it is not necessarily the act of them alone that is going to purport to create some outcome. Religion has gone through many seasons and many phases on your human planet. We understand that many of you perceive religion as one of the most restrictive forms of consciousness that you can interact with at this time. But even in ancient civilizations, there were teachings that were proposed as connecting with the authentic God within. So we can look at church as any way that your human self decides to interact with it. It may be that your human self needed to immerse itself in religious dogma and practices because that part of the human condition was necessary for you to explore and come back as a great philosopher or teacher of new ways of understanding these symbolic stories and references. But we look at much of what has been left behind in ancient temples, churches, even your Bibles and religious writings, for example, as taken outside of its original context. So if you are bringing the consciousness to that material that you believe and you desire, then you are actually molding and shaping it to your highest outcome. It is similar to a channeled transmission such as this. What you are interacting with right now is a vibrational experience. It is bringing you into a quantum state where you are being or where you are receiving the insights and explanations that are curated through energy. And as that energy becomes integrated by you, it will meet your consciousness exactly where it needs to do its best work. This is why multiple humans can decipher channeled transmissions, or for that matter, religious writings completely differently than one another. Or than another, because what is being offered in that translation is a manifestation of consciousness. So we don't necessarily see that these activities of the past are negative, but we see they've been utilized or put into the context of suppression through time, some of them still even holding those imprints that are waiting for you to interact with them differently. It is not like the example of currency that was brought into the previous question. the imprint of money has to change in order for humans to live in a fifth dimensional potential. Well, the imprint of religious teachings and stories or programs or different ways of practice also must have the imprint of them changed in order for you to raise up the true and pure sources that they can be to support you where you are headed.
Could you conclude the session, please?
Yes, we are the Pleiadians. So many of us have been pleased to be here today through this channel, accentuating your vibration and understanding, knowing that it is only validation of what you already know within. And we activate you in the knowing that what we see in the vibrational potentials is something far better than the mind could conjure as it looks out upon your planet through a very turbulent transition. But we also hold the space for you to uphold that belief yourself and are willing participants in your journey anytime it is requested. Many blessings. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. If you're online, we're going to take a short break. So we will be back in about 15 minutes or so, and Ethan and I will be back up.
Yay.
Thank you.